Do you love the smell of fresh baked bread? Love the taste of fresh baked bread? Think it's hard to do at home? Well, it's not. You can do it at home with a bread machine in your own oven. With a couple hours, you can make it. In this video, I will teach you how to make honey oat bread using your bread maker. Well, hi there. Good to see you come around today. Today I'm going to make some bread. Want to join me? It's going to be a honey oat bread, and we're going to start off by proofing our yeast. Something I don't normally do, but when I'm working with these sort of breads, I do like to do that. Now, to proof our yeast, we start off with our water. We want to make sure it's warm, but not too hot. Yeast likes between 95 and 110 degrees. So, pretty sure it's going to be a bit over that right now. Now, to this, though, while it's still really warm, I'm going to add half a cup of honey. And this is going to be our sugar source for the yeast. And if we add it now while the water is extremely warm, we can get it to start to dissolve. And as you can see, I'm doing this in a large 4-cup. I mean, you can do it in a smaller one if you want. You can do it in the bowl if you want. Sorry about that there. Oh hey, and don't forget, if you like this video, don't forget to go ahead and hit the like button. And if you want to join the tribe, also hit the subscribe button. And click on that notification bell so you can hear when I upload new videos, especially this one. Get this starting to stir in a little bit here. Give that a couple of seconds here. Temperature is actually not bad. Let's see if we can see that. Yeah, just about. I'll bet that I can actually add that yeast right now. And what we're doing to proof this is making sure that the yeast are still alive. Kind of get them working a little bit early. So we're feeding them and waking them up. Now I usually store mine on the counter, and I've got more in the fridge because I buy mine by the pound, not by the little jar. So while this step isn't completely necessary if you made sure that you've bought your yeast fresh, if you've had your yeast stored for any amount of time longer than about 3 or 4 months, you really kind of want to do this. And what we're doing is we're watching for bubbles to start forming. And these bubbles should start forming within a few minutes. If they don't, then your yeast is gone to sleep permanently. Oh, and actually you can kind of see my yeast starting to work already. Here, let you kind of see that. Now that big clump in the middle there, that's from me stirring it. But all this little around here, this little white foam you see starting to form, that's actually the yeast bubbles. But we still want to give it a little bit of time. Maybe a total of about 5 minutes is going to be necessary. Now, because I'm using the bread maker for doing this, there's a couple of things. I don't bake my bread in the bread maker. The reason I don't is the seal at the bottom of the pan around the piece for paddle. This little seal right in here, as the metal expands from the baking process, doesn't always reseal properly. And after a while, this will leak. This machine here that I'm using is over 12 years old, and that's still the original pan. This is a trick my mom taught me. So, and she wore out the machine faster than she wore out the pans. As a matter of fact, I've got a couple of pans in my storage from her machine that fit mine, just for in case, because the seals do wear out after a while, sometimes. But that's pretty good if you can see if you can keep the machine going long enough that you wear out the drive mechanism before you wear out the pan. Kind of saying something. Well, we might not even need 5 minutes because, as you can see, this is nice and foamy. So let me get your attention back over here on the bread maker here. Go ahead and start by adding our 2 cups of warm water with our ½ cup yeast, and there is 4 teaspoons of yeast in here. You just see, it's got to get nice and stirred up. So we're going to start off by adding this to our pan. Now, when you're using a bread machine, you really do want to add your liquids first. Now, also, another trick to using bread machines versus using a mixer or just hand kneading is the order that you add your other ingredients. You don't want to add your salt in with your yeast because it will kill it. To the bread machine, we are going to first add in 4 cups of whole wheat flour for this. Okay. Now we're going to add 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Now this is going to make up a couple of loaves, so don't worry. I'm going to add in 1 cup of uncooked oatmeal. Four tablespoons of vital wheat gluten. or just wheat gluten, depending on what you want to, or what you can find. Difference, probably nothing more than the name based on the manufacturer. Oops, something I forgot to add in, even though I made sure to put it aside. This is how you do this if you put things in out of order. So I forgot to put in the oil. I'm going to slide it out of the way here a little bit, and we can pour that back down in. That was 4 teaspoons, or tablespoons, excuse me, of vegetable oil. Now that we've got all of our other ingredients in, all of our dry, all of our liquid underneath it, now is the time to add the salt. And in this case, there is 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, because we're using a bread machine, we are going to now go ahead and just put it over here on, because we're not baking it in here, you want to put this on the dough cycle. So all it's going to do is mix it and do your initial rises. And when I say initial rises, I mean we are going to separate into a pan, or pans in this case, and we will need to rise it again. But this does a lot of the heavy lifting for it, so to speak. As it kicks into this, don't be afraid. We can go ahead and make sure to scoop things down, push them down, just like you would if it was in a mixer bowl. Just make sure you don't go shoving your scraper, spatula, whatever you want to refer to it as, into the actual paddle, because you could bind it up and that would unfortunately break the machine. Because I'm pretty sure inside the gears are probably made of plastic. But if you accidentally touch it, don't worry. It's not going to immediately break. It's not going to be that fragile. After all, it's meant for mixing dough. If you've ever done that by hand, you know how stiff it can get and how incredibly difficult it is to manipulate after a few minutes. Now, this is actually one of my favorite breads to make because the texture on it comes out nice and, moist, but not too moist. It's definitely not a dry bread. It's definitely not one of those ones that when you're sitting there trying to have a sandwich, it turns into dough again as you're trying to eat, or if you accidentally lay your chips on top of it. Now, one of the reasons I do this is I like to make sure that the moisture is right. Humidity in the air, such as your weather, can actually affect how moist your bread is going to be. I'm actually thinking that I'm going to need to add a little bit more water to this. Probably don't even need an eighth of a cup. So we're just going to kind of put just a little bit. That was probably maybe a tablespoon. Yeah, I'm going to need a lot more than just a tablespoon. You can hear the motor starting to strain a little bit. Now you don't want it completely moisten there, because when the dough ball forms, it's got to be not so sticky that it sticks to the side of the pan. So some sections of this dough are actually too moist. There you go. See? There. Now we have the right consistency. And it only took probably about 3 tablespoons of water from what that was combined. For the most part, that's what the machine consistency at this point should look like for bread dough in a bread maker. Now, mind you, we still have an hour and like 18 minutes to go before it's, as the machine would say, ready, but we're not going to be ready. because there'll be at least another rise cycle afterwards. So we'll go ahead and let this do its duty, and we'll come back in a little while. We'll come and check on it here in a bit, make sure everything's going well. Well, it appears that the dough is rising quite well. So we're actually going to pull it out a little early. There's still about 10, 11 minutes left on the dough cycle according to this. But as you can see, it's risen quite a bit. So, I'm just going to do this. Get that out of the way. And now at this stage, because like I said, I make enough to make 2 loaves. I'm going to put that out onto my board to divide it. Though, before I do that, I better set up my pans. Now I use my ends of butter there. It's already on a little bit of wax paper, so it just makes it a little quicker and easier. And most of the recipes usually say to grease with the butter anyways. Sometimes it needs a couple of them though. But you know what? I tend to go through a little bit more butter due to all the other cooking. So I usually have a few. The neat thing is if you fold them in half, like this, when you first empty them, you can stick them in the freezer too, and they will stay usable for a bit longer. Okay, so now that I've done that and gotten that out of the way, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of. I'm using the same whole wheat flour for this stage that I did for in it, so. That didn't work. Never does, but I hope that one day it will. You see it just comes right out. Now, at this stage, don't forget, grab your paddle. And the first thing we're going to do is take a knife or some sort of a semi-sharp instrument and split our dough roughly in half, just so that the loaves are kind of equal. And then what I do is I will fold them over a couple of times. And then each one into a loaf pan. Now, I will, at this stage, put a little bit more oatmeal on it. Now, I would also normally put either an egg wash or a butter wash on before baking, but today I'm not going to do that. But I am going to let it rise for about another 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on how it rises. And I'm going to start warming up my oven now because it's sitting on top. Also double check, make sure my oven is empty. So, we'll come back in about 20 minutes to check on those. See you then. Well, it's been about 20 minutes. Let's take a look at this and see how well it's doing on the rise. Well, they're doing good. Looks like they're going to need a little bit more time. Probably about another 20 minutes. You want them to kind of be up to at least the level of the pan edge, maybe a little bit higher. But you don't want them more than about 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 above the top. Otherwise, it's going to be too much. So, we'll be back in 20. So, we've now let the bread rise another 20 minutes from that. So, it has now risen about 45 minutes total. Just because of other things. And that is now what it is. Don't mind the thump, that was just some recording equipment. So, now that it has risen, we are going to stick it in the oven at 375 approximately. Just because these dials are never exactly accurate. I don't trust it to be. And after the first 15 minutes, I am going to lower the temperature. And we're going to cook this total between 30 and 40 minutes. So, I'm going to go ahead and stick this in the oven and let's go from there. And we'll be back in a bit. Well, now it's time to turn down the temperature just about 25 degrees. It's been in there about 10 minutes now. Double checking, yes. Now by turning down the temperature, what we're doing is we're not over baking the outside to allow the inside to bake a little bit more. So, we'll be back in about 20 minutes to check on it. Well, they've been in there now for about 30 minutes total. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull it out now and we're going to take a look and listen. The reason we're going to listen is to make sure to see if they sound like they're hollow when you tap on it. So let's take out one and test it. For a moment. Oh, that actually does sound hollow. going to do now is we'll pull out the other one and test it too. Because they are a little bit different in size, and that will affect the bake time a little bit. Well, they sound hollow. So, I'm going to go ahead and say that they are done. Now, you want to let them cool down for about a half hour before you pull them from the, or turn them out onto a cooling rack. So, we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so bread's cooled for a little bit, so now it's time to go ahead and pull it out of the loaf pans and put them on to a cooling rack directly. Now, if everything's well, you can just do this, and they'll just come right out. But I can guarantee that these pans are hot enough to still need to have some sort of protection when you move them around. And you want to let these kind of cool down for at least an hour or two before you cut into them. Honestly, the first loaf never seems to last more than the first day after I bake it. So, here you have it. Enjoy. Well, now that these have cooled down a bit, it's time to go ahead and slice into one and see what they look like and taste them. Save the pretty one for later. Now you want to use a partially serrated knife for this, and you don't want to put pressure on, just enough. Let the knife do the work. That way you don't end up with squished bread. There you go. Now it's time to enjoy your own.